Well, let's come back to this semi-autobiographical film, The Hottest State, which is just now out. How much of it is actually your story, and how much of it is embellished or
well, that's the kind of thing. The problem with being me, a lot of people write that falls into that category of semi-autobiographical fiction, whether you're talking about Proust or Jane Austen or Emily Dickinson or James Baldwin or Jack Kerouac or John Steinbeck, or, you know, the list is endless. There's a weird element thrown into it that I think that has made it both easier and harder for me, which is the fact that I'm technically like a celebrity, and that people refer to me and think of me as such. If you're a writer and you're Jane Austen and you write a semi-autobiographical novel, nobody knows where you come from or what you do. So nobody, those lines.
Or necessarily cares.
Or cares.
Right.
But, I remember the New York Times review of Ash Wednesday referred to one of the characters as my then wife. Said, well, the Uma character. The New York Times did that. It wasn't characters not based on her. It was actually based on the girl I was dating before I met Uma. But they, so you deal with these things because I believe in using the fabric of your own life to create authenticity for the emotional complexities you want to talk about. It is semi-autobiographical, which is not to say it's a memoir. It's not the truth. And it's really frustrating for my family and friends because I use the parts that are convenient for me to use.
Right.
For example, the main character is an actor. Right. So everybody thinks, well, that's obviously based on you. And I guess you could logically jump to that conclusion. I thought it was the perfect, if you're going to write a book about romantic love, the actor is the perfect character to think of.
Why is that?
Well, because he's playing a role. And the way we all do for each other when we first meet. With this girlfriend, I'm moody and silent. With this one, I am the handyman, because she, or whatever. We take on different personalities a little bit, or different parts of us are highlighted depending on who we're with. Right. And particularly when you're 21 and you don't have any sense of self and you're not sure who you are, I thought, oh wow, the actor is the perfect. If you're going to do a first love story, the actor is a perfect person. In this country, which is wildly celebrity obsessed, that simple metaphor is completely lost. In all the reviews in London, it's mentioned.
They get it.
They get that as
Right.
Over here, nobody gets that.
Right.
They're like blinded. It's like, but did you sleep with Paris Hilton or didn't you? I want to know. And
did you?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
You opened the door.
I know. Well, but it's frustrating for me because I love writing. Yeah. And Dead Poets Society came out when I was 18 years old.
Right. It's almost 20 years ago.
Almost
it's hard to believe
20 years ago. And the problem is, if all I did was act after that, very few people are doing the same thing they did professionally when they were 18.
No matter what profession it is.
No matter what profession. And I needed to do something else. Yeah. There's a reason why the long list of actors who are successful at 18, there's a huge casualty list there. Yeah. Whether or not the casualty means whether or not they're actually dead, or whether or not they have lost their love, have lost their passion for creativity. And I felt I had to make a few dangerous moves there to break the glass wall of celebrity.
Right.
People want you to be, like this fabulous person who then who goes to premieres and drinks champagne and lives this fabulous life. They want to believe that hype. And then you're allowed to commit suicide or, have some terrible drug addiction. And then you're humanized for a brief moment and then put behind the glass wall. Right. And I've resisted that. I don't know if this is, I may have spun off into my own.
No, but I think it's actually because it answers the question that they always ask about you, which is, well, why did he decide to write these novels? Or why is he deciding to direct? Why can't he just act?
Yeah, and if you're, people understand why you do things if they think you're going to make a lot of money doing it. And as soon as it's obvious that you're not just trying to make a buck, they get very suspect.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They want to know, oh, what is his motivation? Like, oh, he wants to be taken seriously, or oh, they project some kind of immediate negative goal on your part. And in a way, it helps me stay sane is to realize that is very fair. Mm-hmm. That my books have had an easier time getting published than somebody who's a struggling writer at UT.
Average person shows up with that manuscript, maybe harder to get the publisher.
Much harder, because there's a certain curiosity factor.
Right.
That guy who was in that movie wrote a book.
Right.
Must be terrible. Let me look at it.
Right. They do assume going in it must be terrible. Right.
If I swear, it's so, you know, it's just like, I mean, look, it's not worth complaining about, but it is. Every positive review of my books or movies starts with, you know, surprisingly. You know? and I always think, what did I do that was so bad?
Right.
You think, like, surprisingly, Lee Harvey Oswald wrote a good book. You know, it's like, well, you know, I am an actor.
Right.
I've worked with some of the greatest writers, you know, alive on the planet, and everybody who writes books or has another job.
Right.
I mean, and most actors write. The truth is, they just do it in screenplays. Mm-hmm. And if I had done that, I would have saved myself a lot of hassle.
Well, the one issue, as I say, is people want to know why are you doing this, but then to come back to what we were talking about, the second is, well, he's working out issues in his own life because there are parts of his life.
Because he's so damaged.
Right. There are things in these novels that relate at least partly to his life, so clearly he's working out things in his fiction.
That's a way to say it. The other level to say it is that the purpose of art is communication, and the belief that through communication there can be some kind of healing through mutual understanding. I was in Dead Poets Society and I bought this stuff, hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Carpe diem.
Yeah.
You know, hold a mirror as 'twere up to nature. Right. If somebody here were to say, you know, my brother suffers from manic depression. Right. He has these terrible episodes, and it's a real agony for my family. Right. You know. A lot of people would be horribly embarrassed. You know, somebody in their family might say, oh, you shouldn't have said that. And what would happen over the course of the next hour is people would say, well, you know, my uncle does too, and this is how we dealt with it, and have you tried this doctor, and blah, 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 and this is a very real thing. And this kind of healing takes place, and the person who's, you know, suffering doesn't feel ashamed. You know, Mark Twain said the purpose of art is to alleviate shame. And that the idea of fiction is to take truths, emotional truths, and manipulate them so that they tell a story. You know, for example, I was wildly loved by my family, by both my mother and my father, and I had a wonderful stepmother, a stepfather. I had a wonderful stepfather and have a wonderful stepmother, who have helped raise me my whole life and helped shape me the person that I am. In The Hottest Date, for example, I have the character be, what's the right word? He's estranged from his family. And all I did, that's not true.
Yeah.
I grew up in full contact, knowing I was a loved person. I can't imagine a child receiving much more love than I did. But I still had feelings.
Sure. And
feelings of estrangement and all the issues that young people do, and you take those feelings and you create a story and you kind of weave it to tell a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, because life doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end.
It's not so neat.
It's not so neat.
Yeah.
But the value of fiction, it's satisfying to hear a story that has a beginning, middle, and end.
Well, that's fair.